A drunk driver slammed head-on into Janet Pattison's car. The force of the impact threw the car back 35 feet, and Janet's head smashed through the windshield. Ironically, the drunk driver escaped with only bruises, while Janet was rushed to the hospital in a coma.
The girl at the hospital said that they had brought Janet in from a serious accident. And I recall asking her the question, well, is she still alive? And the response was, yes, but you'd better hurry.
By the time Janet's parents got to the hospital, their daughter's life was hanging in the balance.
The doctors, of course, immediately said that there was little hope that she'd survive the emergency room because her injury was so severe. And you couldn't really recognize her except that her left part of her head was crushed in over the left eye, and her face was so lacerated that where she'd only gone into the windshield, that we didn't recognize her as our daughter. It was difficult to thank God at that moment for just the condition that we saw Janet in, but we decided we were going to thank God for the outcome. We had to look to the future and believe that regardless of all the bad news that we were receiving from the doctors, that she really was going to come out of it and have an effective life.
And that was a lot to believe for when you consider the prognosis. Doctors said that Janet's brain had been so severely damaged that she was unlikely to ever regain consciousness. Even if she did, they said she would be a vegetable for the rest of her life. And time proved that the prognosis was right. After 3 months, Janet's parents were told that the hospital could do no more for their daughter unless she regained consciousness. With nowhere else to turn but their faith in God, Janet's parents took their daughter home and prayed for a miracle.
And while we were she was at home, we got a mat, foam rubber mat, and put it on the floor. And we continued, my wife and I continued to do all kinds of things with her to try to wake her up. I guess you'd call it therapy, and try to get her to do things. And it was another 3.5 months before we really saw much of any progress. And that was kind of a long, difficult time.
When most people in America were celebrating Thanksgiving Day that year, the Pattisons were weary and discouraged. They prayed that God would give them a breakthrough. 2 days later, that prayer was answered.
And Saturday morning, my wife went in to check with Janet, as she did every morning, and immediately she called me and she said, something's very different about Janet. So I went rushing in, and Janet had a smile on her face, and her eyes were open.
7 months to the day, Janet regained consciousness. From that time on, she began a vigorous therapy program, but the challenge to recover seemed almost impossible. 17 years of her memory were lost. She couldn't read, write, or walk. To make matters worse, Janet had the mental age of a 5-year-old.
There were times I wanted to just give up and I'd argue with God at times. And I just think, why am I going through this? Why has this happened to me? I just didn't sit in a wheelchair and having to first trying to walk or get. What does it mean being perfectly normal? Again, what am I going to lose?
At that point, they still didn't have a lot of hope that she would be able to lead a normal life. And there were a number of things that were still, malfunctioning and not proper because the injury had been so severe. But it's really amazing how she had progressed.
Despite many discouragements, Janet believed her relationship with God was more important than the doctor's opinions.
I realized that they didn't know who his master physician was, Christ, and I knew that Christ had brought me through this far. He wasn't going to drop me off or forget me. He was going to bring me back 100%. And my faith never died, ever, the whole time, because I knew that I would recover the way he wanted me to.
The next 5 years were tough for Janet, but to the amazement of her doctors, her faith and endurance paid off.
I'm amazed when I look at myself and think, all the hard work I did, allowed me to get back, but it wasn't the hard work I did, it was the work that the Lord had, because the Lord had a plan. And he allowed me to recover and get back because he has another plan for me.
Reading some of the reports, you'll realize that they claim that she'd never be able to marry and have children and lead a normal life. And of course, Janet today is married to a wonderful husband who takes really good care of her, and she has 2 beautiful little daughters. And all of that is just a real miracle.